gentlemen, this is your host, Johnny Samp from the Beer, Meat, and Cheese podcast, and we've got a fantastic show ahead for you. Yes, it is just me this week. Carter has decided to take off this week. He is doing some dog sitting. What a good gentleman, and what a good way to help out the in-laws' dogs. But nevertheless, we're going to keep the podcast pushing, keep it going on, because it's been another Packers win, and the Packers don't give up on us, so why would we give up on them? But anyways, we'll get things started here right away, and it's going to be just me once again throughout the whole show. Yes, a little boring. Going to be talking through some Packers win here this week, which is awesome. They did manage to get past the Arizona Cardinals, which I thought was going to be a very scary kind of game for us with that scrambling quarterback and Kyler Murray, but they ended up winning 34-13 in that contest, and it was a good one. I mean, the green and gold were able to score 24 points in that first quarter, and really something they haven't done in that first quarter. They've been more of a second half team. We've seen it with the Minnesota game where they scored a whole bunch in that back half but weren't able to get through. But it was a really good game from the Packers. I think one of our best all-around games in terms of both offense and defense playing well. I know there's questions on the defense and that sort of thing going around, lingering around Packers media, Packers markets, but they managed to get the win, hold Kyler to a minimal run game, which is something I really wanted to see from them and something I haven't seen in a long time with a running quarterback in Kyler Murray and others. But we'll get talking about that here. We'll start right away with that. Obviously, 34-13, having 24 points at half, which is really good for the Packers. Now, the back half of that game, a little bit shocking. I think we scored 7 in the third quarter and then 3 in the fourth quarter to give us 34, which was, kind of lay off the gas, I guess, when you're up that big. I'm not going to critique it too much. I think there was a lot of good play from all around the board. Jordan Love there, 22 for 32, 258 yards, 4 TDs, 1 interception. Again, he's playing lights out. He's got some of the most touchdowns in the league for the amount of games he's played. He's doing really well. I really like what he's doing, and I think we finally meshed as an offense to find out where we're at. Kind of hit the cogs on the old turning wheels, and we can really kind of get an idea of what we're capable to do. Just even with that Cardinals game, I know the Cardinals aren't necessarily a top team in the division in the conference, but they are certainly a good team. We've seen Detroit, I believe, struggled with them earlier in the season, and a couple others have struggled with them. So they do play a competitive game. Now we'll look a little bit over to the run game side of things. The run game was a little bit, I don't know. I wasn't real thrilled with it. I think there was more to be done. I think more that could have been done from the Green Bay Packers side of the ball. But let's look at Murray. He was 22 for 32, 214 yards, and 1 touchdown in the contest. We didn't get that Xavier McKinney pick that we were all looking for. I know it's something that I was looking forward to, hoping to get those 6 games, and he just was not able to do it. That's totally fine with me. At least it doesn't hold that over his head. I think he plays a phenomenal game. I really like what I'm seeing with him, especially working with those rookies, with Evan Williams back there, Bullard getting back there. It looks really good. Our safeties are looking really good this early go at it, and I'm really excited for what they're doing in that defensive side of things. But we'll talk a little bit about the running game. So the running game, we've invested a lot of money into it. We got Josh Jacobs over the offseason, and it's still, I guess it's a little disappointing from him. And I know a lot of fans are concerned about it because we did end up letting Aaron Jones go. And he was a phenomenal runner and rusher, and he could do it all over the place. And we're seeing him do it for the Minnesota Vikings, which, good for them that they got a good rusher. He had injury problems. We didn't really want to play with that anymore. Josh Jacobs a little bit more durable, but Jacobs in that game, 18 carries, 62 yards. That's not going to be able to do it, big guy. You got to get those more yards. I know you can. I know he can do it. He showed it to us against the Colts, and he played a really good game there. But he just needs to find a little bit of rhythm in his rushing attack, which is something that I think is going to take, I want to say take time, but we don't really have time. I mean, we have time till the postseason, which I'm hoping we're going to be able to make, but we don't, we're already almost halfway through the season, and I would like to see him get those numbers up. I'm sure he can get those numbers up. He's a phenomenal runner, and he's done it a lot. He's gotten a heavy load from the early get-go. I mean, 18 carries in the contest is a pretty good one. but he's got to get those numbers up. He's got to get those yards per carry up. It's something I'm going to be a little more critical on if I don't see it from him, just because it's a little bit disappointing. We invested a lot of time, money, and efforts into him, so I'd like to see him get more into the offense. Now, on the other hand, Emmanuel Wilson, he has been a dog. He has been really good in that rushing attack. I know Carter and I talked about him last week and how he is a phenomenal runner, and he's doing a really good job at it, and he continues to do a really good job at it. Last game he had 7 carries, 54 yards, 7.7 yards per carry, ladies and gentlemen. You're not going to get much better than that in the NFL. I've talked to a couple high school kids. They average like 8 something, but in the NFL where you're getting guys that all make tackles, all make plays, I don't know if it's going to get much better than that, but in that contest, Emmanuel Wilson looked really good. The one thing I was impressed by, I didn't know I was going to be impressed by until I looked at the stats afterwards, was that all of Arizona's rushing attack, now they did have a very spread rushing attack from, Kyler Murray to running receiver routes in the rushing game to right there with James Conner. But all their rushers were held under 25 yards or under, which was huge for the Packers defense. A big credit to them for stopping that. And I think that starts with that linebacking core with Cooper kind of getting up there and working within. He played a really good game. He always does. And Quay Walker actually had a phenomenal game. Quay Walker, a lot of people have been critical of him in these recent weeks and recent months. But he's been playing, at least last game he played lights out. And he was at the top of the tackling block there for the defensive side of things. But let's keep moving forward. Now on reception side, Watson had a good game, 3 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown for him. Dobbs had 2 touchdowns in the contest. That was something I was expecting to see. Getting Dobbs back into that play. Dobbs, obviously had the week that he had and was sitting out and that sort of thing. And then he finally got back into the routine. So it's good to see Dobbs getting back in, getting those touchdowns. And he is a consistent catch. I'm not going to lie about that. He's going to be a guy that gets your catches. He's not necessarily, he doesn't always make the prettiest plays, but he gets those consistent catches, and he can make things happen when he does get the ball in his hands. We did see it happen when the ball was a little bit underthrown by Love. He'd managed to slow down. The corner kind of overstepped it, fell down, and then he caught it. He kind of lost his balance and then just hit the pylon, went in, touchdown, Lambeau leap. Have a lot of fun with it. Enjoy the moment, Mr. Romeo Dobbs, because we love you here in Green Bay and we want to see you be here in Green Bay. Now let's keep looking at the other side. It was McBride. He had 8 catches and 96 yards in the game. So nothing really too much clicking for the Arizona Cardinals. I give a lot of credit to the Packers defense, playing really good in a game with a running quarterback. I know we do struggle against those quarterbacks, and we have struggled in the past, but this game we looked really phenomenal in this contest. That being said, let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. Defensive side of the ball didn't have any sacks in the contest, and I think they only had 2 tackles for loss, which is very concerning. We're not getting to the quarterback, and I understand he is a rushing quarterback and, a kind of more complex offense with that kind of dynamic. They got Marvin Harrison Jr. to the outside. They got a couple other guys as well. But it was another game where we're not seeing that pass rush get there, and we've invested a lot of money in that defensive line. So it'd be nice to see something come to fruition from their rushing attack. Now, if you don't know what fruition means, you can look it up, but it means something to come to life from that rushing attack. Kenny Clark up the middle has been really quiet. Yes, I do credit him with a lot of the run stopping. And then Rashawn Gary on the outside, not being able to get to the quarterback. Lucas Van Ness, I don't even think he played in the contest, but if he did, he's been struggling all season, just getting pushed around to the outside. Our pass rushers are not getting inside. Preston Smith, basically non-existent out there. And it's something that I think needs to be addressed, because we are at this point in the season where the trade deadline is ending here. Now, it is the 17th, and I believe I did write it down here. The trade deadline, I believe, is on the 5th of November at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And you have to make the moves before then. You got to get the clock rolling. And I think I know a lot of Packers fans are on board with this idea. And I'm going to just say it, just to let you guys know. I think Max Crosby would be a perfect fit for the green and gold. Take a second, think about it. Yes, he is an elite pass rusher. He gets to the quarterback, but he also can stop the running attack. He's not a full, he's not one-dimensional player where he can only rush the quarterback. He can get to the running backs. He's got speed. He's a shifty dude, and I know he's going to take a buttload of trade capital to get him. So if we do want to play it for the Super Bowl potentially and play ahead and look ahead at this season, I think this season to commit it for the green and gold. I think this season is going to be one where you got to invest in that team. You got to invest in what you have already to get to that level. Because I don't know if we're necessarily there yet on the defensive side of the ball. If we're like Super Bowl ready, I still think there's teams better than us. And I obviously hope for growth within the department. But right now, I don't see the growth happening on the defensive line. And I really think adding a different kind of exponential player would be a phenomenal move for the Green Bay Packers. Now, what would the Raiders be asking for? They just traded Devontae Adams. We'll talk about it later for like a 4th rounder, conditional 3rd rounder, pending on some things. I think if Max Crosby wants to get out of the the Vegas Raiders system, it's going to take a little bit. He's kind of a house-grown guy. He was drafted by the Raiders. He's played the Raiders his whole career, and I don't think he's going to go light. So I think if we do make a move like that, I know I'm going to get roasted for this, but I'd be willing to trade a guy like Lucas Van Ness and a draft pick, probably a 3rd or 4th rounder. I'd be perfectly comfortable doing that to try to get him over to Green Bay. I would hope he would take less, but you never know with that Vegas roster. They've already lost one big name. Antonio Pierce has got to be looking for some weapons, some leaders in that locker room, and I'm guessing he's going to want to hold on to Crosby with that. But I do definitely see an opportunity here for the Packers, given what we have and what we need. And it's not to say, Crosby can. I compared him earlier to this week, and you can do like the Charles Woodson thing, come over to Green Bay a couple years, win a couple, make it deep runs in playoffs, get a Super Bowl under your belt, and then you can go back to playing for the Raiders and whatever. And if they're any good when they come back, I'm gonna guess not. It's Las Vegas, just a bad ownership, bad franchise overall, I would say, but I think if you can make a move for Max Crosby, you do if you're the Packers. Even if it seems like it's taking a bigger chunk out than what you would like. I don't like that we're always relying on the draft the following year to try to build up the team when we could build it up now with products, not prospects. Because the draft's all prospects. Everybody's going to be, saying, oh, this guy's phenomenal. And then 2 weeks later when they're into the huddle and playing, oh, he really sucks. But that's the NFL. That's the nature of the game. I think Crosby would be a great addition. And obviously, I know I'm speaking out of my ass because I'm not dealing with the money side of things. I think we take a capital hit. I think we just accept it for what it is. And we get an elite pass rusher out of it. Now, taking a look at some other defensive sides of things, I want to give a big shout out here to Evan Williams. He's been playing phenomenal the past few games. I think he is an emerging star in the NFL, and he looks like he's playing at the highest level that he possibly can. I'm really impressed by what he's doing on that defensive side of the ball. I know it's going to be a lot of leadership from McKinney. I give McKinney, I already said, a lot of credit for him. He's leading that backside of the ball and doing a really good job at it, but it seems like Evan Williams is picking up the pieces really quick. I know a lot of Packers fan nation is very happy with what he is doing, and it'll be interesting to see how he can produce as a player in his first year and continue to grow. Along with Bullard, he's another big name that really kind of stood out. And then Cooper. I mean, Cooper's really playing a good linebacker position. Just one of those guys that's consistent tackles and looking really good. So a couple of those guys I just want to give a big shout out. They're putting up consistent numbers week after week. Doesn't matter what kind of offense they're facing, they're going to be showing up at the top of the hits column, tackles column, going to be making plays, and that's what we want to see in the green and gold. We want to see guys making plays, and week after week, just 1 week at a time. Some other news within the Packers organization: they signed kicker Brandon McManus from the Jaguars. Now McManus did just get clearance from the NFL from his sexual assault investigation. Now I think the Packers definitely did their research on this one. Obviously, you're going to tread lightly with it. I'm hoping McManus can bring a good leg to Green Bay. I've hoped it before, and I'll hope it again. I wait till I see something happen. I know McManus does have pretty consistent numbers in the past. But I thought Narveson was the guy, and he's not the guy, obviously. And I know a lot of people are calling for his name, too. But we are going to be hosting a kicking tryout here on the Beer, Meat, and Cheese podcast. We'll be recording it. So if you would like to come on to the show and join us for that, well, actually join us for the video recording. We'll have you kick. It'll be some fun. You'll kick with Carter and I, hopefully. We can get both of us together, and I'm hoping to get a long snapper, a holder. We'll rotate the positions, and then I got to invest in a couple footballs, which obviously don't come free. So if you do want to sponsor me for a football or send a football my way, we could use it for the kicking. I do ask that they be a professional size football. We may start with like a junior size for, just trying to get the confidence going, and then work our way up to the professional size. I'm not planning on investing in a Wilson Duke ball. They are $160. I don't really have the money right now to do that, but if somebody does and they want to send it our way, be more than willing. I'll be more than willing to accept it. I'll even host you on the show. You'll be the football guy, the ball boy, we'll call you, and have a lot of fun with it. But now let's look ahead here. Packers do have the Texans at home in the whiteout game at Lambeau Field. Kind of an interesting game because Lambeau's always been pretty conservative on doing like the fan games and doing, this and that kind of thing. But I really do like this whiteout idea. I think this will be a lot of fun for the fans and for the players. It's a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit different of a look, obviously. I know a lot of the more traditional fans are not really accepting of the white helmets. They wanted to keep the yellow helmets. But, guys, come on. It's one game. It's going to be fun. I think it's going to be really rambunctious. I did not get tickets to that one. But if I actually worked that day, but it'll be fun to watch on TV. I'll give you that. It'll be fun to watch on the TV. But the Texans are coming in with a win versus the Patriots at Gillette, 41-21. Now, this Texans team has been picking up pace. They started out a little bit rough. Looked a little bit rocky against the Bears in a really bad contest. The Bears actually were able to stay in it. I think this Texans team is a different team than what we saw early in the season, but I do not think they beat the Packers at home. I think the Packers get the win on a big night at Lambeau, or actually afternoon. I can't believe it's an afternoon game with the hype and everything else behind it. I know I'm kind of in a whiteout right now with my brand new light. I got to adjust the settings a little bit. It's a little bit bright, but we'll get over it. But yeah, CJ Stroud's coming in town. Stephon Diggs. Now, this is a big storyline. Stephon Diggs, Jair Alexander going to be facing each other for the first time since they played against each other at Buffalo. And I think Diggs is going to shut him down. Or, excuse me, I think Jair is going to shut him down. I think Diggs is going to swallow his pill again. I don't think Diggs is that phenomenal of a wide receiver. I know he gets a lot of credit because he gets a lot of touches. But I think the Texans are going to work mostly through. They're going to try to work the run game a little bit, and then they're going to get Dalton Schultz involved. Obviously, Green Bay is going to have to be prepared for that, using their linebackers to cover Schultz, and I would put Jair on Diggs. That's a good matchup for anybody. And Jair just plays well in big games, and I expect him to play well in this one. So I do not see the Texans, wiping out this game, or actually, taking out the lights on this whiteout game. I think the Packers do get the win here. And I'm going to give it Packers 24, the Texans 21. So I'm going to go with the Packers on this one. It's going to be a good win. It's not going to be a huge win. It's going to be a tight game. Defenses are going to be locked in. Offenses are going to be locked in. I expect a couple turnovers in the contest from either side. But I think the Packers come out on top. I really do. I think the Packers get the win here. It's going to be a grudge match. I said this couple weeks are going to be tough. And then once we get into November, it's going to get a little bit tough as well. But Packers get the win here, 24-21 over the Texans. You've heard it here first on the Beer, Meat, and Cheese podcast. And make sure, if you do listen in, make sure to send in your what your predictions are. I'd love to hear from you, even if you are like not in between on both the Packers and the Texans. Really doesn't matter to me. We'll show your results and see how close you are. But I do credit the Packers, and I give them the win in this contest. Yes, a little home bias, but that's all right. Lambeau Field's having a whiteout. They've never done it. They got to win in this contest. They got to win. Now, let's take a look at some other teams in the North here. The Bears, the Chicago Bears. They went to London, and they took care of business. They beat the Jaguars 35-16, and basically the Jaguars' home game, because I'm thinking London's going to be their new landing spot here maybe by 2030. Jacksonville, not really a great city, not a real strong fan base there. Just never really came to fruition. It was a good effort, but never really came. Williams in that contest, 23 for 29, 266 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. And he looks like he might be getting better, but it's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. And I do want to give him credit for keeping his head down. He did have a rocky start. And I think if any contest, this upcoming contest is going to be a good one, I think he needs to face a little bit stiffer of a defense just to give him credit for that. And you could say the Rams are up there. He did play pretty well against the Rams and everything else, but it's going to be an interesting contest here, and it'll be interesting to see what they can do, or he can do especially. But they do have the Commanders coming up, and the Commanders are obviously a solid team. Jaden Daniels proving that he can play with anybody, and he might be the Rookie of the Year. It's going to be a battle of the rookies, the 1 and 2 pick, and it'll be interesting to see how this one goes. But if I'm looking at the Bears right now, I think they are gaining steam, but I think their steam might be a little bit fraudulent in the side that they haven't really played the stiffest competition. They, just going from last year, I know Bears are always willing to hype on the Super Bowl or bust train. I don't think they're Super Bowl ready. They look like, if I'm a Bears fan, I'm shooting for the wild card. Especially with how strong the North is right now, I think the Vikings are in collapse. I think the Lions aren't as good as they are, and I know this is all biased sounding from a Packers fan, but I've just going off an experience here. I think the Packers were the best team at the end of the season last season. I think the Lions were second, and then I think it was probably Bears, Vikings. But Vikings are kind of on this Sandy run. So if I'm a Bears fan, I'm just hoping for a win. But in this contest, I'm not going to give you that win. I'm going to give the Commanders 35-21. Jaden Daniels goes off in this game, proves that he should have been the number 1 pick. And maybe he was lucky not going to Chicago, because it seems like he has a little bit more weapons, or utilizing his weapons better over in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. So it'll be interesting to see how that game goes and how Caleb Williams plays and Jaden Daniels plays. Obviously, the USC, LSU never really got to play each other too much in the college ball, even when Williams was at Oklahoma, and I think Daniels was somewhere else beyond my knowledge. I think this might be one of the first times they meet and play against each other, but I'm going to give it Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels gets the dub, and yeah, he's going to get 35-21. Commanders get the win. Commanders, really a surprising team this season. I mean, let me tell you, I didn't expect anything from them. I didn't think Jaden Daniels was going to be nearly as good as he is, and he's playing lights-out football and playing it really well. But it'll be interesting to see, once again, how this one pans out. Now, Minnesota had the buys, but they had the bye, not the buys, the bye. But they do take on the Detroit Lions, are kind of a first NFC North, besides the Packers-Vikings rivalry, divisional rivalry. And now the Lions, on the other hand, they're coming off a huge win versus the Cowboys, 47-9. So then the question remains, are the Lions that good or the Cowboys that bad? And I'm going to tell you it's the Cowboys are that bad. Jerry Jones has a mess on his hand. Dallas has been a mess. And he's going to have to try to fix something, because obviously there's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of venture, a lot of people looking for this Cowboys team. Mike Parsons got to sign a new deal next season. Dak Prescott signed one this year. CeeDee Lamb signed one, but they all seem frustrated with what's going on. Mike McCarthy's on the hot seat. A lot of things might be transitioning here for Dallas here in the next few weeks if they get another loss on the schedule. and they can't find a way to get the wins. But speaking here now I'm going to say the Lions, I'll give them credit. They play good football. They're a solid football team. I think Dan Campbell has done a really nice job with them, but I think their best season was last season. I think they're kind of on the downhill again, even though they are 4-1. I think, the Packers are going to beat them this year. Got full faith in my green and gold. Obviously, this is a little bit of a biased podcast. It is called the Beer, Meat, and Cheese Podcast. Everything you need for your tailgate and more. So make sure to tune in and tweet me at Real Johnny Samp. And Carter's off of the show, so I wouldn't tweet at him, but you can if you'd like. Just be nice with him. He's a good guy. Nonetheless, we'll get moving here. And so who wins this Minnesota Lions game? It's going to be a head scratcher. I think the fact that the Lions are more solidified as a team than Minnesota is. I know Minnesota wants to make the claim that they are as good as they say they are, and it's not a Linsanity run. It's a real deal, Evander Holyfield kind of deal. But I really don't see it. I do not see it. I do not see that the Minnesota Vikings are as good as they are. I think Sam Darnold is playing a little bit, just kind of out of his mind. And good for him. Credit to him. Really a big credit to him. He's playing really well. But I don't think they're naturally that good of a team. I would say the Lions are a better team. Now, Minnesota did sneak out a win at Lambeau. They only won by 2, though. And 2 more minutes in that contest, I think the Packers got the win. I was at that game, a little bit disappointed, given that we couldn't get anything going on the offense, and we struggled on the defensive side of the ball in that first half. And then the second half, we came and played lights out again. And Minnesota couldn't stop us. So that's what drives me nuts about this Minnesota team. They just scored enough points in that first half to get by. I don't think they really conquered that game. And I'm always going to fight for that and say that. I know I take a little bit of flack for that from a couple of those on Twitter and the other universes out there. But Minnesota, I really don't believe you guys are that good of a team. I'm sorry. I've never been a Vikings fan. I can't stand the Skol chant. I think it's dumb as hell. And I'm going to go Lions by 3. I don't like Detroit either, but I think they are more fortified of a team. Dan Campbell has a better leadership on that team than I would say O'Connell does on the Vikings. And it just feels like a Linsanity run for me with the Vikings, and I don't know how else to explain it, but it's just this inexplicable event that you just keep getting wins, and it's just like really head scratches. Like, how'd you guys beat that team? And I really can't believe Brian Flores' defense is that phenomenal. I know it's on paper looks good, but that doesn't always transition to the football field. It's a tough transition from the paper to the football field and everything else. So I'm going to say Lions by 3. And I didn't really put a score prediction on my sheet here. So I'm going to go off the cuff here. 27-24, maybe a little bit less, just because I think both defenses are going to play well in this one. Detroit obviously has a few weapons. They got a couple injuries as well, but so do the Vikings. No excuses for injuries. Those happen in football. But if I am going to go anyway, I am going to say that the Lions get a 3-point win, and it's going to be like 27-24, maybe a little bit less, and 24-21. We could even knock it down to 2017, given, maybe 2 touchdowns and a missed extra point for the Lions, and then 2 touchdowns and a field goal, or 3 touchdowns, a missed extra point for the Lions, and 2 touchdowns and a field goal for the Vikings. But I really do, I'm not trying to harp on the Vikings fans. I'll harp on Lions fans too. I think Dan Campbell's kick your teeth in kind of attitude and go for 4th on, take the chances every time isn't necessarily the best for the football league. I know he is a guy that likes to gamble, likes to, go for those 4th downs, which I respect. I respect it. As a football coach, I think that's a good, if you're going to do it, go for it. Do what you want to do. But when, especially come last year in that San Fran game, 17 points ahead, and then dropping that lead and letting San Fran take the win, yeah, your gambling did not pay off. And eventually you got to pay your debts. And that game, he did pay his debts. But I think they get the win in this one. I think Detroit does. And I think, they take hold of the North for a little while. I'm going to say a little while. I think the Packers are full steam, coming right at you. Hot cheese, baby. Hot cheese. And nacho cheese, maybe. Nacho cheese. We'll go with nacho cheese here. And it's going to be, actually, you could kind of do that as a rhyme or a hymn. But Lions are not going to have their cheese. They're going to have nacho cheese. And those Packers are coming back at them. I think the Packers are really playing good football, and I hope to see it continue here against the Texans this weekend in a whiteout game at Lambeau Field with all white uniforms, white everything. Now, I wish this game was a little bit later when it might be snowing, potentially December game. I mean, that would just be intimidating, and then you could really do kind of like the Game of Thrones King of the North thing with the White Walkers and everything like else. That would be really badass, but of course we're not going to do that because we'll throw it in October when it's still 60 degrees out here in Green Bay. But nonetheless, it'll be a fun game for both of them, fun game for the North and Bears. I obviously probably bet against the Bears a little bit much, but they do have the Commanders. Commanders going to be a really solid team, or are a really solid team, and I think, Jaden Daniels, as long as he doesn't get injured, and I know they compared a lot of his stats to RG3, kind of that mobile quarterback look, but Daniel stays in the pocket more, I would say. And I think he's got a little bit more around him with Lauren and everybody else. And they now I'm blanking on the tight end's name, Ertz. Yeah, Ertz is out there as well. So that's, a really good team and a really nice situation I think that Daniels is in. And it'll be interesting to see what they can do and if they can make that playoff run. Because their conference is kind of wide open as well with the Giants, Eagles, and blanking on last team. NFC East, Giants, Eagles, Commanders. And this is what always happens when you're doing a show and you're trying to think ahead of time. Giants, Eagles, Commanders. Why can I not think of the last team? It's not Carolina. Come on. It'll come here. Whatever. Giants, Eagles, Commanders. That's going to bug me. I don't know why I can't think of it. But I cannot right now. Giants, Eagles, Commanders. Who am I missing? I don't know. I don't know why I'm blanking. I wish I had Carter on here to help me out with the co-hosting duties. That's why you always have a co-host, because you're kind of thinking on the run here when you're running things on your own. And I'm really blanking on this one, ladies and gentlemen. Giants, Eagles, Commanders, and the Dallas. Yeah, Dallas. Why is that the dumbest conference in all football? Because Dallas is in the South and they're not in the NFC South or in the NFC East. I knew I was blanking on a team, and it's them Cowboys. And of course, that's why. So I finally did figure it out, ladies and gentlemen. I do know my conference or my divisions. I just was blanking on it because I'm thinking of the map. And obviously, Dallas makes zero sense to be in the NFC East. And that's always fun to do on air. And, eventually we'll be live, but it'll be fun when it's live too as well. But now let's kind of wrap things up here. I know it was kind of a quicker show for the Beer Meat and Cheese Potty. We'll hopefully have a longer show next week. Hoping to get some more guests on here, having some more co-hosts as well. But we'll talk about the Davante Adams trade. He got traded to the Jets, ladies and gentlemen, and he is out of the Raiders team organization. And the Raiders are, the butt crack of the NFL right now. But everybody's just trying to get a little bit of that shit with Max Crosby and everybody else. It's obviously, it's good for him. If he wants to go to play with Rodgers, who I think is ready to retire in the next year, good for him. I know he was excited about it. He was, he posted his thank you Raiders fans thing and whatever. I think that was a little half-hearted given that he was already in the Jets facility. And I don't think he really was thinking that much about the Raiders fans. But it will be interesting to see what they can do over there in New York. Obviously, the Jets just lost to Buffalo in a tough one. I think it was 23-20 or something in that ballpark. And Rodgers, he had something on his mind. It looked like he was going to, he already knew something. And I'm guessing he knew that Davante Adams was going to be a New York Jet and going to have some fun over there. The Jets now looking to get rid of Evan Williams as a receiver. He was on a 1-year deal, which could be a pretty good option. But it'll be interesting to see what the Jets can do. But they're basically the Packers from before, just a lot older. So I don't think they're going to do very deep of a run in any sort of way towards the playoffs. Obviously, I think highly of Rodgers, Davante. They gave us a lot of good years at Lambeau Field, and they were a lot of fun to watch. But I really don't think they are the team that they think they are. I think you're picking up kind of the retirement home of players. I mean, they're all kind of getting older. None of them are really in their prime. I think I would have traded for somebody with a less capital hit or a less salary cap hit, or try to get somebody out that market. You already do have a great number one receiver at Garrett Wilson, but now Davante's coming in, going to steal that spot, obviously. And Rodgers is going to let him. But it'll be interesting to see what the Jets can do, and so much more. I mean, there's a lot of NFL left. I always say that. I can't stand when people do the Week 7 division standings. Like, who cares by the end of the season? I mean, we saw the Packers last season. They didn't play well till like Week 9, and then they went on this run here and got right into snuck into the playoffs. But the trade deadline is on Tuesday, November 5th. I believe that's Election Day too, so make sure you get out there and vote at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, so 3 p.m. here Central, 2 p.m. Mountain, and 1 p.m. Western. So will be interesting to see what happens, what comes to fruition, what kind of players go where, if any players do move. I know some of the players on the chopping block here, like Hassan Riddick, he could be interesting. I think he's a little old. Not necessarily a guy I'd go for, but he could be a good addition to that defensive line, as we did talk about before with Max Crosby. I think Crosby is your pinnacle, if you can get him over to the green and gold. But it's going to be a long shot, and I'm going to try and push for it every day on Twitter. So make sure to do follow me and stay in touch. Just reach out to me, say, hey, I watched the show. I think you did really crappy at this and did really crappy at that. I'll probably send back like something like thanks, or I'll just let it pass. Or if you say something good, I'll be say, hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate all the viewership that we do get. And it's always fun to hear when you're, kind of interacting with the fans and everything else and what's going on with this, everything happening in the NFL trade deadline coming up. And it's going to get spooky here. It's going to get spooky. Halloween is coming up, and it's going to get spooky here in the NFL. So that'll just about close everything up here for the Beer, Meat, and Cheese podcast on ESPN Sports. I'm hoping to have Cardinals back on next week, and then we don't have to have just a talking head, kind of recycling everything that's happening in the NFL. And other news, I just want to make sure to keep everybody updated for their tailgate adventures. Make sure to be playing us for everything you need for your tailgate: the beer, the meat, and the cheese. Everybody likes that, unless you're a vegetable kind of person at the tailgates. Could be. Not necessarily me. I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin. We eat very, very meat and cheese, a lot of cheese, dairy. Vegetables are good too, once in a while. Maybe some chips. And obviously a case of beer. You can't go wrong with that. So the Beer, Meat, Cheese podcast is closing out. I do thank everybody for tuning in this week. And I hope you guys have a great weekend and a great Sunday of the NFL. It should be a fun one. And go Pack, go. And you know what, for the Bears. Have a great night.